The dog smelled death before he saw it. Bristle moved low through the canyon, ribs showing through his patchy coat, nose working the air like it held secrets. He wasn't anybody's pet. Hadn't been for years. Just a half-starved cattle dog that survived on scraps and instinct, avoiding men when he could, stealing from them when he couldn't. But this smell stopped him cold. Not the usual rot of a coyote carcass or the sweet stink of a days-old deer. This was different. Fresher. Human. He circled once, ears flat, then moved toward it. The canyon floor opened up into a wide bowl of red dust and scattered rock. Wind cut through it like a blade, kicking up grit that stung the eyes. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here. It was the kind of place things came to die quietly. And there she was. A girl, maybe 20, maybe younger, hard to tell with all the blood. She lay on her side, one arm twisted beneath her, the other stretched out like she'd been reaching for something that wasn't there. Her dress was torn, dark with dirt, and worse. Flies had already started to gather. Bristle approached slow, hackles raised, ready to bolt if this turned into something he didn't understand. She didn't move. He sniffed her hand. Cold. Stiff fingers caked in dust. He turned to leave. Then she sucked in a breath. It was small, broken, more reflex than intention, but it was air. Life. Barely. Her eyes cracked open, just slits, unfocused and glazed. Her lips moved, shaping words that had no sound. Bristle backed up a step. She tried again. This time a whisper came out, thin as smoke. "Don't leave me?" The dog's ears swiveled forward. "Please." Her hand twitched, fingers curling slightly like she wanted to reach for him but didn't have the strength. Bristle stood there, caught between instinct and something he didn't have a name for. He wasn't a rescue dog. Wasn't trained for anything except survival. Every bone in his body told him to run, to get distance between himself and whatever trouble had put this girl in the dirt. But he didn't. Instead, he sat, watched her chest rise and fall in shallow, uneven rhythms, listened to the wind scrape across the canyon walls, waited for her to die, maybe, or for something in him to decide what the hell he was supposed to do. She whispered again, so faint he almost missed it. "Cold." Her eyes closed. Bristle tilted his head, considering. Then he stood, shook the dust from his coat, and started running. Colt March didn't believe in signs. Didn't believe in luck, fate, or the idea that the universe gave two damns about what happened to anyone. You lived, you worked, you died. Everything in between was just noise. He stood at the fence line, hammer in hand, driving a post into ground that fought back with every swing. The ranch stretched out around him, 200 acres of scrub grass, rocky soil, and wind that never stopped. It wasn't much. Wasn't supposed to be. It was quiet. That's all he wanted. The war had taken everything else. He didn't talk about it, didn't need to. People who looked at him could see it in the way he moved, careful, controlled, like a man who'd learned the hard way that hesitation got you killed. His hands were scarred, his face weathered past his 30-some years, and his eyes had the kind of emptiness that came from seeing too much and feeling too little. He raised the hammer again. That's when he heard the barking. Colt lowered the hammer slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing but open land and the long shadow of the canyon to the east. The barking came again. Closer. Frantic. Then he saw the dog. Bristle came tearing across the flat, kicking up dust, moving faster than Colt had ever seen him move. The dog usually kept his distance, showed up every few weeks, stole food from the porch, disappeared again. Colt left scraps out sometimes. Didn't mean anything, just less waste. But now Bristle was running straight at him, and he wasn't stopping. Colt set the hammer down and waited. The dog skidded to a halt 10 feet away, panting hard, eyes wild. He barked once, sharp and insistent, then turned and ran a few steps back the way he'd come. Stopped. Looked over his shoulder. Barked again. Colt frowned. "What?" Bristle ran back to him, circled once, then bolted toward the canyon again. "Hell," Colt muttered. He didn't follow right away. Stood there, weighing it. Could be nothing. Could be a trapped rabbit, a snake, some piece of trash the dog thought was important. He had work to do. Fence wouldn't fix itself. But Bristle came back a third time, and this time he didn't stop barking. Colt grabbed his rifle. Tit. He followed the dog into the canyon, boots crunching over loose rock, rifle slung across his back. Bristle stayed ahead, glancing back every few seconds to make sure Colt was still coming. The wind picked up as they descended, carrying the smell of dust and something else. Something wrong. Colt's hand drifted toward the rifle. Bristle stopped at the edge of the bowl and waited. Colt came up beside him and looked down. For a long moment, he didn't move. The girl lay in the dirt like a discarded thing, small and broken and still. Blood had dried in dark patches across her dress, her hair. One of her boots was missing. The other was caked in mud. Colt's jaw tightened. He'd seen bodies before. Plenty of them. This shouldn't have been different. But she wasn't dead yet. He could see it in the faint rise of her chest, the barely there flutter of her throat. She was still breathing. Somehow. He slid down the embankment, rifle in hand, and approached slowly. No telling what had happened here, or if whoever did it was still around. He crouched beside her, fingers going to her neck. Pulse was there. Weak, irregular, but present. Her eyes opened, just barely, slits of brown, unfocused and glassy. "Hey," Colt said quietly. "Can you hear me?" Her lips moved. No sound. "I'm going to get you out of here, you understand?" She blinked. Once. Slow. He scanned her injuries quickly. Gunshot wound to the side, looked like it had gone clean through. Cuts and bruises everywhere. Dehydration, shock. She'd been out here at least a day, maybe more. She shouldn't be alive. Colt slid his arms beneath her, lifting carefully. She weighed almost nothing, bones and ragged breath. Her head lolled against his chest. Bristle stayed close as Colt carried her out of the canyon, pacing alongside like a sentry. The girl didn't speak, didn't move, just breathed, shallow and slow, while the wind tried to pull her away. The ranch house was small, one room for living, one for sleeping, a kitchen that barely qualified as such. Colt laid her on the bed, the only one in the place, and stepped back. She looked worse in the light. Pale as bone, lips cracked and bloodless. The gunshot wound had clotted, but infection was already starting, red and angry around the edges. He filled a basin with water, grabbed the cleanest cloth he had, and set to work. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't even close, but he'd patched enough men in the field to know the basics. Clean the wound, stop the bleeding, pray it didn't go septic. He peeled the torn fabric of her dress away from the wound and started cleaning. She didn't wake, didn't flinch, just lay there, breathing, while he worked. Bristle sat in the doorway, watching. "She's not going to make it," Colt said quietly, not sure if he was talking to the dog or himself. Bristle's ears twitched. Colt kept working, washed the blood away, packed the wound with clean cloth, wrapped it tight. Then he moved to the cuts on her arms, her face, the bruises that told a story he didn't want to read. Someone had hurt her, bad, on purpose. His hands stilled for a moment, jaw clenching. Then he kept going. By the time he finished, the sun had dropped below the horizon and the room was dim. He lit a lamp, pulled a blanket over her, and sat in the chair by the window. Bristle patted over and lay down at his feet. Colt stared at the girl, this stranger he'd pulled from the dirt for no reason he could name. "Stupid," he muttered, "getting involved, bringing her here. She'd probably die anyway, and then he'd have a body to bury and questions he didn't want to answer. But he didn't move. He just sat there, rifle across his lap, and waited. She woke 3 days later. Colt was outside, splitting wood, when he heard the crash. He dropped the axe and sprinted inside. The girl was on the floor, tangled in the blanket, gasping for air. Her eyes were wide, wild, searching the room like she expected something to jump out of the shadows. Colt stopped in the doorway, hands up, non-threatening. "Easy," he said. She scrambled backward, hitting the wall, and pressed herself against it. Her breathing came in sharp, panicked bursts. "Where?" Her voice cracked. "Where am I?" "My ranch." "You're safe." "Safe?" She laughed, brittle and broken. "Safe." "You were shot, left in the canyon. I brought you back." Her hand went to her side, fingers brushing the bandage. She stared at it like she didn't recognize her own body. "How long?" 3 days. She closed her eyes, shoulders shaking. Colt stayed where he was, didn't approach, didn't ask questions. Just let her sit there, pulling air into her lungs, remembering how to be alive. Finally, she looked at him. "Who are you?" "Colt March." "Why'd you help me?" He shrugged. Dog wouldn't shut up about it. Her eyes flicked to Bristle, who sat in the corner, tail thumping once against the floor. "That's your dog?" "Not really. He just shows up sometimes." She stared at Bristle for a long moment, then back at Colt. "I don't have anything to pay you with." "Didn't ask for payment." "Then what do you want?" Colt met her eyes, steady and flat. "Nothing." She didn't believe him. He could see it in the way her jaw tightened, the way her hands curled into fists. "Everyone wants something." "Not from you." Silence stretched between them, thick and uncertain. Finally, she pushed herself up, wincing, and stood on shaking legs. She swayed, caught herself against the wall. "I need to go." "You can barely stand." "Doesn't matter. I can't stay here." "Why not?" She looked at him, and for the first time he saw the fear underneath the defiance. "Because he'll come looking for me." "Who?" Her throat worked, swallowing hard. "Danner." The name came out like poison. Colt's expression didn't change. "Who's Danner?" "The man who owns me." "Nobody owns you." She laughed again, that same brittle sound. "You don't know how this works." "Then tell me." She shook her head, pushing off the wall. "I need to leave. Now. Before—" Her legs gave out. Colt caught her before she hit the floor, arms steady, impersonal. She struggled weakly, trying to push him away. "Let me go. You're hurt." "I don't care." "Well, I do." The words came out harder than he meant them to. She stopped struggling, staring at him. "Why?" Colt didn't have an answer for that. Didn't know why he'd carried her out of the canyon, why he'd spent 3 days keeping her alive, why the idea of her walking out that door made something in his chest tighten. So he just said, "Because nobody deserves what happened to you." Her eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Not tears, something sharper. "You don't know what happened to me." "I can guess." "Then you know why I can't stay." "I know why you think you can't." She pulled back, putting distance between them, wrapping her arms around herself. "You don't understand. Danner, he's not just going to let me go. He'll come. And when he does, let him." The words hung in the air, cold and final. She blinked. "What?" "Let him come. I'll be here." "You can't fight him. You don't know." "I know plenty." She studied him, really looked at him for the first time. Saw the scars on his hands, the way he carried himself, the rifle that never left his side. "You're a soldier." "Was." "And now?" "Now I'm just a man trying to live quiet." "Then why would you risk that for me?" Colt was quiet for a long moment. "Because quiet doesn't mean much if you can't look yourself in the mirror." She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. Finally she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "My name's Myra." Colt nodded. "Myra, I don't know if I can stay." "That's your choice. But if you run now, you won't make it 2 miles." She knew he was right, could feel it in the weakness of her legs, the fire in her side every time she breathed. "How long?" "Until you're strong enough to make it, however long that takes." "And if Danner comes before then?" Colt's eyes were flat, emotionless. "Then we deal with it." Myra looked at him, at Bristle, at the small room that smelled like wood smoke and leather. She should leave, should run as far and as fast as her broken body would carry her. But she was so tired. Tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of surviving just to wake up and do it all again. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She stayed. The first week was silent. Myra slept most of the time, her body pulling her under in waves. When she was awake, she watched Colt move through the house like a ghost. Efficient, quiet, always working. He didn't talk much, didn't ask questions, just left food by the bed, changed her bandages, and disappeared again. Bristle stayed closer, slept by the door at night, followed her with his eyes during the day. She didn't trust it, any of it. Men didn't help without wanting something. That was the first rule she'd learned, the only rule that mattered. But Colt didn't touch her, didn't look at her the way Danner's men had, didn't speak to her like she was property. He just existed around her. It was unnerving. By the second week, she could stand without falling, walk a few steps before the pain forced her to sit. The wound was healing, slower than she wanted, but healing. She started moving around the house, testing her limits. Found Colt's things: a worn saddle, a collection of tools, a rifle cleaned and oiled to perfection. No photographs, no letters. Nothing that suggested he'd ever had a life before this. Looking for something? She spun, nearly fell. Colt stood in the doorway, arms crossed. I wasn't snooping. No, I mean, yes. I don't know. She steadied herself against the table. I'm not used to being somewhere I can just walk around. His expression didn't change. You can go anywhere you want here. Nothing's locked. Why not? Nothing worth stealing. She glanced around the sparse room. He wasn't wrong. You live alone? Mostly. Why? Easier that way. Easier than what? Colt was quiet for a moment, then said, easier than explaining. Myra understood that. She had her own things she didn't want to explain. The dog, she said, changing the subject. Bristle. He really just shows up? Yeah. And you let him? He does what he wants. I just don't chase him off. That's not normal. Nothing about this is normal. She almost smiled. Almost. Instead, she said, thank you. Colt frowned slightly. For what? For not asking. Asking what? Questions about where I came from, what happened, why I was in that canyon. Her voice dropped. Most men would have asked by now. Figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. And if I don't? Then you don't. She studied him, trying to find the angle. The trap. The moment where this all turned into something else. But his face was just tired. Not cruel, not calculating, just tired. I was traded, she said suddenly. Colt's eyes sharpened, but he didn't speak. My father sold me 2 years ago. Gambling debt. Danner took me as payment. Her hands clenched. He runs I don't know what to call it. A circuit, I guess. Girls like me. Bought, sold, moved from camp to camp, workers, companions, whatever the men paying wanted. The words came easier than she expected. Maybe because Colt didn't react, didn't flinch or look away or offer useless sympathy. He just listened. I tried to run once before, she continued. He caught me, made sure everyone knew what happened to girls who ran. She touched her side absently. This time, I waited, planned, stole a horse, a knife, made it almost 20 miles before his men caught up. The gunshot? She nodded. They were supposed to bring me back, but the one who shot me, I think he panicked, thought he killed me. They left me there. And you crawled into the canyon. I didn't want anyone to find the body. Thought maybe if they couldn't find me, they'd think I got eaten, dragged off, something. Her laugh was hollow. Stupid plan. You're alive. Barely. Still counts. She looked at him, this strange, silent man who'd pulled her from death for no reason that made sense. He's going to come looking for me. I know. And when he does, people are going to get hurt. Let them. You don't understand, Danner. He's not just one man. He's got a whole operation, men, guns, connections. He doesn't lose things, especially things he thinks he owns. Colt's voice was calm, flat. Then he's going to learn something new. You can't fight all of them. Watch me. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it scared her. Why would you do that? Risk everything for someone you don't even know. Colt was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I spent 4 years fighting a war I didn't understand for reasons that didn't matter. Watched good men die for nothing. His eyes met hers. Maybe this time it'd be for something. Myra didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. 3 weeks in, she started working. Not because Colt asked. He didn't, but sitting around made her feel useless, and useless felt too much like before. She started small, washing dishes, sweeping floors, feeding Bristle when he showed up. Her side still ached, but the sharp pain had dulled to something manageable. Colt watched her but didn't comment, just adjusted the workload around the house, leaving tasks she could handle, taking the heavier ones himself. One morning, she found him outside working with a young mare. She's green, he said without looking up. Skittish. Hasn't been handled much. Myra leaned against the fence. You break horses? Don't like that word. I just teach them we're not the enemy. The mare danced sideways, nostrils flaring. Colt moved with her, calm and patient, voice low and even. Can I help? He glanced at her. You know horses? Grew up on a farm. Before. He considered, then nodded. Get in here slow. Don't look her in the eye. Myra climbed the fence carefully, dropping into the corral. The mare's ears swiveled toward her, body tensing. Easy, Myra murmured. Nobody's going to hurt you. She moved sideways, giving the mare space, hands visible and empty. The horse watched her, uncertain. That's it, Colt said quietly. Let her come to you. They stood there, the three of them, in the morning sun, waiting. Finally, the mare took a step forward, then another. Myra held still, breathing slow, until the horse's nose brushed her shoulder. Good girl, she whispered. Something loosened in her chest, something she'd thought was gone forever. When she looked up, Colt was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. What? She said. Nothing. You're good with her. Yeah, well, I know what it's like to be scared all the time. The words hung between them. Colt turned back to the mare, but his voice was softer when he spoke. You don't have to be. Not here. Myra didn't answer. Didn't know if she believed him. But for the first time in 2 years, she wanted to. Yep. By the 5th week, the nightmare started. She'd wake gasping, tangled in sheets, Danner's voice still echoing in her ears, the feeling of hands on her skin, the sound of men laughing while she bled. The first time it happened, Colt appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand, eyes scanning for threats. It's nothing, she said, voice shaking, just a dream. He lowered the rifle but didn't leave. Want me to stay? No, I'm fine. He hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. But after that, she noticed Bristle sleeping closer, right outside the door, like a guard. The nightmares didn't stop, but somehow, knowing the dog was there made them bearable. One night, after a particularly bad one, she found Colt sitting on the porch, staring out at the dark. Can't sleep? She asked. Never could. Not really. She sat beside him, pulling her knees to her chest. The war? Among other things. They sat in silence, listening to the wind move through the grass. Do they ever go away? She asked quietly. The dreams? No. The honesty was brutal, but she appreciated it. You just learn to live with them, he continued. They get quieter, less sharp, but they don't leave. That's bleak. That's life. She laughed, just a breath. You're not great at comfort. Never claimed to be. But he stayed there beside her until the sun started to rise, and somehow that was enough. Week 6 brought the first real test. Myra was in the barn, mucking stalls, when Bristle started barking. Not his usual bark. This was different, urgent. She dropped the pitchfork and ran outside. 3 riders on the horizon, moving fast. Her blood turned to ice. Colt! He was already there, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the approaching figures. Inside, he said. Now. If it's Danner, inside. She ran into the house, heart hammering, and grabbed the knife from the kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was something. Through the window, she watched Colt walk out to meet the riders, rifle slung across his shoulders, relaxed but ready. The men pulled up, horses snorting and stamping. The leader was tall, bearded, with a scar running down his left cheek. Myra didn't recognize him, but the way he sat his horse, like he owned the ground beneath it, made her stomach twist. Help you? Colt said. The man smiled, all teeth, no warmth. Heard you found something that doesn't belong to you. Don't know what you're talking about. A girl, about 20, dark hair, ran off from her employer. Employer? Colt's voice was flat. That what you're calling it? The smile widened. We're just looking to return lost property. There's no property here. You sure about that? Positive. The man's eyes flicked to the house. Myra stepped back from the window, pulse racing. Mind if we take a look around? Yes. That's not very neighborly. I'm not very neighborly. The tension pulled tight, a string about to snap. The scarred man leaned forward in his saddle. You know who you're dealing with? Don't care. You will. Doubt it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the scarred man laughed, low and dangerous. Danner's going to want to talk to you himself. I'll be here. The man tipped his hat, mockery in every inch of the gesture. See you real soon. The riders turned and galloped off, kicking up dust. Colt stood there until they were gone, then walked back to the house. Myra was waiting by the door, knife still in her hand. They know I'm here. Yep. They're going to come back. Yep. Colt. We've got time to prepare. That's all that matters. She stared at him. You're not scared. Fear doesn't help. But you could die. Could have died lots of times. Haven't yet. She wanted to scream at him, shake him, make him understand what was coming. But looking at his face, calm, certain, unbothered, she realized something. He did understand. He just didn't care. What do we do? She asked finally. Colt looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since they'd met, he smiled. It wasn't warm, wasn't comforting. It was the smile of a man who'd been waiting for a fight. We get ready for war. The next morning, Colt handed her a rifle. Myra stared at it like it might bite. I don't know how to use this. You're going to learn. He led her out behind the barn where he'd set up a row of bottles on fence posts. The wind was picking up, carrying the smell of rain that wouldn't come for weeks. Hold it like this. He positioned the rifle against her shoulder, adjusting her stance. Feet apart. Lean into it. Don't fight it. The recoil's going to hurt the first few times. Great. Sight down the barrel. See that notch at the end? She nodded. Line it up with your target. Breathe out slow. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. Myra did as he said, focusing on the bottle furthest left. Her hands were shaking. Steady, Colt said quietly. It's just a bottle. Can't hurt you. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, slamming into her shoulder. The shot went wide, kicking up dust 3 feet to the right of the target. Damn it! Again! She lined up another shot. Missed. Again. Miss. Again. This time, the bottle exploded in a shower of glass. Myra lowered the rifle, breathing hard, shoulder throbbing. But something hot and sharp moved through her chest, something that felt almost like pride. Good, Colt said. Now do it 9 more times. They spent the entire morning out there. By noon, her shoulder was purple with bruises and her ears were ringing, but she could hit 4 out of 5 bottles without hesitating. You're a fast learner, Colt said, reloading. Had good motivation. He glanced at her. Fear? Anger. He almost smiled. That works too. They walked back to the house, and Myra realized something had shifted. The rifle didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt like possibility. Why are you doing this? She asked. Teaching you to shoot? All of it. The lessons, the preparation. You could just let me leave. Tell Danner you sent me off. Wash your hands of it. Colt stopped walking, looked out at the horizon where the riders had disappeared the day before. I spent 4 years taking orders from men who treated people like pieces on a board. Move here, die there. Doesn't matter as long as the strategy works. His jaw tightened. I'm done with that. If someone wants something from me, they're going to have to come take it. And if they want you... He met her eyes. They're going to have to go through both of us. Myra felt something crack open inside her chest. Not hope exactly. Something harder. More dangerous. Okay, she said. Okay? Teach me everything. Colt studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Get some rest. We start hand-to-hand tomorrow. That night, Myra lay awake in the bed that no longer felt borrowed, staring at the ceiling. Her shoulder ached. Her hands were blistered from gripping the rifle. Her body was a catalog of pains, old and new. But for the first time since her father had looked her in the eye and said, "You're worth more to me gone than here," she felt like she had a choice in what happened next. The nightmares still came. But when Danner's face appeared in the dark, she pictured putting a bullet through it. It helped. The next week blurred into a rhythm of violence and learning. Colt taught her how to move, how to read a fight before it started, how to use her size as an advantage instead of a weakness. Big men think small women are easy, he said, circling her in the yard. They expect you to freeze or run. So you do neither. He came at her fast. She ducked, drove her elbow into his ribs like he'd taught her. He grunted, stepped back. Better, but you pulled it. I didn't want to actually hurt you. In a real fight, you won't have that luxury. Again. They went again. And again. and again, until Myra's muscles screamed and sweat poured down her back, and she stopped thinking about what she was doing and just did it. When Colt finally called a halt, the sun was setting and they were both breathing hard. "You're getting mean," he said. "Good. Yeah, it is." Bristle watched from the porch, tail wagging slightly, like he approved of this new version of her. Inside, Myra washed the dirt and blood off her hands, some of it hers, most of it Colt's from where she'd landed a solid hit to his mouth. "Sorry about your lip," she said. He touched it, wincing. "Don't be. Means you're learning." "Does it ever stop hurting? The training?" "No, you just get used to the hurt." She studied him in the lamplight. "You really think we can win when they come?" "Depends on your definition of winning. Not dying, them leaving me alone. That seems like a good start." Colt poured coffee, handed her a cup. "Danner's got numbers, probably guns. Definitely men who know how to use them. We've got this ranch, some preparation, and anger. That's not a great ratio." "No, but we've got something they don't." "What's that?" "Nothing to lose." Myra wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the heat seep into her palms. "I have something to lose now." Colt looked at her, expression unreadable. "What's that?" "This. Whatever this is, I'm not ready to give it up." "Then we fight harder." It wasn't a promise, wasn't a guarantee, but it was something solid to hold on to in the dark. 2 days later, Myra was mucking stalls when she heard horses again. Her heart lurched, hands going for the rifle Colt had insisted she carry everywhere now. But when she looked out, she saw only one rider this time. A woman. She rode up slow, hands visible, no weapon drawn. She was older than Myra, maybe 30, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much. Colt came out of the house, rifle ready, but not raised. "Can I help you?" The woman dismounted carefully. "My name's Ruth. I'm looking for someone." "A lot of people looking for someone lately." "I'm not with Danner." The name made Myra's hands tighten on the rifle. "Then who are you with?" Colt asked. "Nobody anymore. I ran. 3 months ago. Made it pretty far before I heard about a girl who'd done the same thing." Ruth's eyes found Myra in the barn doorway. "Heard she'd survived. I wanted to know if it was true." Myra stepped out slowly. "It's true." Ruth's face did something complicated, relief and grief tangled together. "How?" "I got lucky." "That's not luck. That's a miracle." "Don't believe in those," Ruth laughed, sharp and bitter. "Me neither. But here you are." Colt hadn't lowered the rifle. "Why are you really here?" "Because I need to know if it's possible. If someone can actually get away and stay away." Ruth's voice cracked slightly. "I've been running for months, looking over my shoulder every day, waiting for them to find me. I'm so tired." Myra knew that exhaustion, had lived in it for 2 years. "You can't stay here," Colt said, not unkind. "We've got trouble coming." "I know. That's why I'm asking. When the trouble comes, can I help?" "You want to fight Danner?" Myra asked. "I want him dead. If that means fighting, then yes." Colt and Myra exchanged a look. Some silent conversation passed between them. Finally, Colt said, "You know how to shoot?" "Well enough." "Fight?" "I've had practice." "Then get off that horse and help me set traps." Ruth's eyes widened. "You're letting me stay?" "I'm letting you help prepare. After that, we'll see." It wasn't a welcome, but it was something. Ruth tied up her horse and followed Colt toward the northern fence line. Myra watched them go, then looked at Bristle. "We're collecting strays now, huh?" The dog's tail thumped once. "Yeah, guess we are." Over the next few days, Ruth proved herself useful. She knew things Myra didn't, how Danner's operation worked, how he moved his men, what he valued most. "He's got about 20 guys working for him at any given time," Ruth said one evening as they sat around the table. "Some of them are true believers. Think they're building something. Most are just in it for the money and the power." "Which ones are the most dangerous?" Colt asked. "The believers. They won't negotiate, won't back down. The mercenaries you might be able to scare off if you make it costly enough." "And Danner himself?" Ruth's face went hard. "He's smart. Careful. Won't come himself until he's sure he can win. He'll send men first, test your defenses, see what you're working with." "Good," Colt said. "Let him." He spread a hand-drawn map of the ranch across the table. We've got 3 ways in. Main road from the east, canyon path from the south, open range from the west. North is all cliff face. Nobody's coming that way. So we fortify 3 positions, Myra said, and make sure they regret choosing any of them. They worked through the night, planning. Colt marked positions on the map while Ruth described Danner's tactics, and Myra asked questions, her mind turning over possibilities. By dawn, they had something resembling a strategy. It probably wouldn't work. They were 3 people against a small army, but it was more than Myra had ever had before. It was a chance. The preparation intensified. Colt showed them how to build traps, simple things, mostly. Tripwires connected to bells. Boards with nails driven through them, buried in likely approach paths. Positions with clear sight lines and cover. We're not trying to kill all of them, he explained. We're trying to make them think twice. Make it cost more than we're worth. But we're going to kill some of them, Myra said, not a question. Probably. Good. Ruth looked at her with something like understanding. You've changed. Had to. I remember what that feels like. The moment you realize being nice won't save you, being good won't save you, only being willing to hurt them first will. Does it get easier? Myra asked. No, but you get harder. That night, Myra cleaned her rifle by lamplight. Movements automatic now. Muscle memory built over weeks of practice. She could field strip it, clear a jam, load and fire in under 30 seconds. Colt watched from the doorway. You're good with that now. Good enough? We'll find out. She set the rifle down, looked at him. You ever regret it, bringing me back? No. Why not? Your life would be a lot simpler if you'd left me in that canyon. Simpler isn't always better. Most people would disagree. I'm not most people. No, you're really not. She paused. What happens after? If we survive this? Haven't thought that far ahead. Liar. He almost smiled. Okay, maybe I have. Little bit. And? And I figure if we're still breathing when the dust settles, we'll work something out. It wasn't a plan. Wasn't even really an answer, but it was honest, and Myra had learned to value that more than false comfort. Colt? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not treating me like I'm broken. He was quiet for a moment. You're not broken, you're just hurt. There's a difference. Is there? Broken means you can't be fixed. Hurt means you're still healing, still becoming whatever comes next. He met her eyes. You're not done yet. Something warm and dangerous moved through her chest. Not gratitude, something fiercer. She stood, crossed to him, and did something she hadn't done since arriving. She hugged him. Colt went rigid for a second, surprised. Then his arms came up carefully, holding her like she might shatter. Thank you, she said again, quieter this time. He didn't answer, just stood there, solid and steady, until she pulled back. When she did, his eyes were different, softer, more human. Get some sleep, he said. We've got work tomorrow. But that night, the nightmares were quieter. A week passed, then another. The ranch began to look less like a home and more like a fortress. Anyone approaching would find their way littered with obstacles and hazards. Ruth taught Myra things Colt couldn't: how to read people, how to lie convincingly, how to spot weakness in a man's stance. Danner's second in command is a guy named Ketchum, Ruth said. Big, mean, thinks he's invincible. He's not. Got a bad knee from a horse kick 2 years ago. He hides it, but if you hit it hard enough, he'll go down. Good to know. Also drinks too much, makes him sloppy. If we're lucky, he'll be drunk when they come. And if we're not lucky, then we improvise. Myra was learning to like Ruth. She didn't soften things or offer false hope, just facts and hard truths. One afternoon, they were working together in the barn when Ruth said, "You care about him." Myra didn't ask who she meant. "He saved my life." "That's not what I asked." Myra was quiet, pitching hay. "I don't know what I feel. Everything's too mixed up. Gratitude, obligation, something else I don't have a name for. You don't owe him anything, you know. Staying out of obligation is just another kind of cage." "I know. That's not why I'm staying." "Then why?" Myra stopped, leaned on the pitchfork. "Because for the first time in years, I get to choose. Not my father, not Danner, not anyone else. Me. And I'm choosing this. Ruth nodded slowly. Good. That matters. Making the choice yourself. Did you choose to run? Not soon enough. I let fear keep me there longer than I should have. Thought maybe if I was good enough, quiet enough, he'd let me go eventually. She laughed bitterly. Stupid. Not stupid. Human. Maybe. But I won't make that mistake again. Ruth's eyes hardened. When Danner comes, I'm not running. I'm ending it. We're ending it, Myra corrected. Yeah, we are. They worked in silence after that, but it was comfortable. Companionable. Like they'd found something in each other that didn't need words. That evening, Colt gathered them in the house. He looked tired, older than his years. They're coming soon, he said. I can feel it. How do you know? Myra asked. Because we're ready, and Danner's had enough time to plan. He won't wait much longer. Ruth nodded. He likes to move fast once he's committed, doesn't give people time to prepare. Too late for that. He doesn't know that yet. Colt spread the map out again. Final positions. Ruth, you take the canyon approach. You know his tactics, so you'll see them coming before they see you. Myra, you're on the main road. I'll cover the West Range. That leaves you alone, Myra said. I work better alone. That's not the point. It's the best use of resources. She wanted to argue, but he was right. They had to cover all approaches, and splitting up was the only way. Bristle stays with you, Colt said to Myra. The dog's ears perked up at his name. Why me? Because he's good at warning before trouble arrives, and because... He paused. Just because. Myra understood. Because Colt wanted her to have every advantage, every protection. Okay, she said quietly. They went over the plan 3 more times, checking details, fixing holes. By the time they finished, the moon was high and the night was cold. Ruth stood. I'll take first watch. After she left, Myra and Colt sat in the lamplight, not speaking, just existing in the same space. Finally, Myra said, What if we lose? We won't. But what if we do? Colt looked at her for a long time. Then we go down fighting, and that's more than most people get. That's bleak. That's honest. She laughed, just a breath. You know, for someone who saved my life, you're really not great at comforting speeches. Never claimed to be. No, you didn't. She stood, touched his shoulder briefly. Get some sleep. Tomorrow might be hell. Might be. But as she walked to the bedroom, she heard him say quietly, Myra? She turned. We're going to win. It wasn't a promise, wasn't a guarantee, but coming from Colt, it was close enough. She nodded and disappeared into the dark. That night, she didn't sleep, just lay in the bed, rifle beside her, listening to the wind and waiting for the sound of horses. But the night stayed quiet. Dawn came cold and gray. Myra stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the horizon. Bristle sat beside her, alert, ears swiveling. Colt came out, checking his rifle for the 3rd time that morning. You ready? He asked. No, but I'll do it anyway. That's all anyone can ask. Ruth emerged from the barn, armed and focused. Positions? Positions, Colt confirmed. They split up, each heading to their assigned post. Myra took the main road, finding the spot Colt had prepared. Good cover, clear sight lines, escape route if needed. She settled in, rifle across her knees, and waited. Hours passed. The sun climbed, hot and merciless. Sweat trickled down her back, her hands cramped from gripping the rifle too tight. Nothing. Then Bristle's head came up, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Myra's heart kicked into overdrive. She peered down the road, squinting against the glare. Dust rising, lots of it. She counted the riders as they appeared. 7, 8, 10. Hell, she whispered. More than they'd expected for a first wave. She fired a single shot into the air, the signal they'd agreed on. In the distance, she heard 2 answering shots, Ruth and Colt confirming they'd heard. The riders came closer, spreading out, and Myra recognized the man in front. Ketchum, Danner's second, big-bearded, sitting his horse like he owned the world. They stopped just out of rifle range. Ketchum's voice carried across the distance. We know you're out there. Send the girl out, and the rest of you walk away. Myra's finger tightened on the trigger. Last chance, Ketchum called. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Silence. Then Myra stood up, just enough for them to see her. Ketchum's face split into a grin. There she is. Come on down, sweetheart. Time to come home. Myra raised her rifle, sighted down the barrel, and put a bullet in the dirt 2 feet in front of his horse. The animal reared, screaming. Ketchum fought to control it, face going red. That's my answer, Myra called out. Come and get me. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Ketchum roared, Take her! And all hell broke loose. The riders charged. Myra dropped back behind the rocks, heart slamming against her ribs. The thunder of hooves grew louder, closer, shaking the ground beneath her. She forced herself to breathe. Count. Wait. Colt's voice echoed in her head. Let them get close. Make every shot count. The first rider hit the tripwire at full gallop. His horse went down screaming, legs tangled, throwing him hard into the dirt. The man behind couldn't stop in time and crashed into them both. Myra rose, sighted, fired. The third rider jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, and tumbled from his saddle. She ducked as return fire cracked overhead, splintering rock, sending chips flying. Bristle pressed against her leg, growling low. Stay down, she hissed at the dog. She moved to a different position, staying low, and fired again. Missed. Fired again. This time a horse reared and bolted, its rider barely hanging on. The gunfire was deafening. Smoke and dust filled the air, making it hard to see, hard to breathe. Myra's hands shook as she reloaded, fingers fumbling with cartridges. 2 riders broke off, circling wide, trying to flank her position. She swung the rifle toward them, fired twice. 1 man fell. The other kept coming. Then Bristle lunged forward, teeth bared, and hit the approaching rider's horse at the legs. The animal shrieked, threw its rider, and galloped off into the scrubland. The man hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with his pistol drawn. Myra pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. The man grinned, raising his weapon. A rifle shot cracked from somewhere behind Myra, and the man's head snapped back. He dropped like a cut string. She spun to see Colt emerging from cover, rifle smoking, face grim. You're supposed to be on the West Range. West Range is clear. You looked like you needed help. I had it under control. Sure you did. Another volley of gunfire sent them both diving for cover. Myra reloaded with shaking hands while Colt returned fire, methodical and precise. How many left? She shouted over the noise. 5, maybe 6. Ketchum pulled back when we started dropping his men. Where's Ruth? Canyon. She took out 3 trying to come up the south path. Myra risked a glance over the rocks. The remaining riders had retreated to a safer distance, regrouping. Ketchum was shouting orders, pointing, organizing. They're going to try again, Colt said. I know. You hit? No, you? Grazed, doesn't matter. She looked at him. Blood seeped through his sleeve, dark and wet. That's not a graze? I said it doesn't matter. Stubborn fool. But there wasn't time to argue. Ketchum's voice boomed across the distance. You killed 4 of my men. Should have been 5, Myra shouted back. Brave talk for a dead girl. Come find out how dead I am. Colt grabbed her arm. What are you doing? Making him angry. Angry men make mistakes. Angry men also stop negotiating and start burning things. Good. Let him show who he really is. Ketchum was conferring with his remaining men, gesturing toward the ranch house. Myra's stomach tightened. They're going after the house, she said. Let them. It's empty. Everything we have is in there. Everything we need is right here. He met her eyes. Stuff can be replaced. You can't. Before she could respond, the riders split up. 3 rode hard toward the house, while Ketchum and 2 others circled toward Myra and Colt's position. Divide and conquer, Colt muttered. Smart. What do? We hold here. Ruth will handle the ones going for the house. You sure about that? No, but I'm sure about you, so stay focused. Ketchum and his men dismounted, spreading out, using rocks and brush for cover as they advanced on foot. Professional. Careful. These weren't the drunk mercenaries Ruth had described. These were soldiers. Myra's mouth went dry. She fired at movement, keeping them pinned, but her hands were shaking badly now. Breathe, Colt said beside her, firing steadily. Just like practice. Practice didn't shoot back. Same principles apply. A bullet whined past her ear, close enough to feel the heat. She flinched, nearly dropped the rifle. Colt's hand closed over hers, steadying. You're okay. Stay with me. She nodded, swallowed hard, and sighted down the barrel again. One of Ketchum's men broke cover, running low and fast. Myra tracked him, led the shot like Colt had taught her, and fired. The man went down clutching his leg, screaming. Good, Colt said. Now the other one. But the other man had disappeared behind a rock outcropping, and Ketchum was nowhere to be seen. Too quiet. Myra's skin prickled. Where'd they go? Don't know. Stay alert. A crash of gunfire erupted from the direction of the house. Myra's head snapped around, but she couldn't see anything through the dust and smoke. Ruth, she breathed. She can handle it. You don't know that. I know she's got more reason to fight than they do. That counts for something. Movement flickered at the edge of Myra's vision. She swung the rifle around just as Ketchum emerged from behind them, pistol raised. Drop it, he barked. Myra froze. Colt's rifle was pointed the wrong direction, and by the time he turned, Ketchum would have fired. They were caught. Ketchum grinned, all teeth, no warmth. Told you this would end bad for you. Not over yet, Myra said, voice steadier than she felt. Pretty much is. Now put the rifle down before I put a hole in your friend here. The pistol was aimed at Colt's head. Myra's mind raced. If she dropped the rifle, they were both dead. If she didn't, Colt was dead. No good options. Bristle growled, low and dangerous. Call off the dog, Ketchum said. He doesn't listen to me. Then he dies too. Bristle's growl deepened. Ketchum's finger tightened on the trigger. Myra dropped the rifle and lunged. Not at Ketchum, at Colt. She hit him hard, knocking him sideways just as the pistol fired. The bullet cracked past where Colt's head had been a second before. They hit the ground in a tangle of limbs. Colt's rifle went flying. Ketchum swung the pistol toward Myra. Bristle launched himself at Ketchum's gun arm, 60 pounds of fury and teeth. The big man screamed, trying to shake the dog off, but Bristle held on, snarling, ripping. Colt rolled to his feet, drew his knife, and closed the distance. Ketchum finally threw Bristle off, raising the pistol again, but Colt was already there. The knife went in low, under the ribs, and Ketchum's eyes went wide with shock. That's for every girl you helped him take, Colt said quietly, twisting the blade. Ketchum choked, blood bubbling at his lips. His knees buckled. Colt pulled the knife free and let him fall. Myra scrambled to her feet, breathing hard, whole body shaking. She'd never seen someone die that close before, never seen the exact moment the light left their eyes. It should have horrified her. It didn't. Colt retrieved his rifle, checked the body quickly for weapons, then looked at Myra. You hit? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Good. Let's move. They ran toward the house, Bristle loping alongside. Gunfire still echoed from that direction, sporadic now, desperate. They rounded the barn and stopped dead. Ruth stood in the yard, rifle raised, facing down the last two riders. One was already on the ground, not moving. The other sat his horse, hands up, eyes wide. I didn't sign up for this, the man was saying, voice high and thin. I'm just here for the money. I'll ride out right now. You'll never see me again. You came here to take a girl back to slavery, Ruth said, voice flat and cold. You think I care what you signed up for? Please, I got a family. So did I, before Danner. The man's face went white. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You knew enough. Ruth fired. The man fell from his horse, hit the dirt, didn't move. The horse bolted, disappearing into the distance. Silence settled over the ranch like ash. Ruth lowered the rifle slowly, shoulders sagging. She looked 10 years older. Myra walked over to her, boots crunching on spent shells. You okay? No, but I'm alive. That's something. Is it? Colt was checking the bodies, making sure. Professional, thorough. When he finished, he straightened and looked at the carnage scattered across their land. 11 dead, he said. Maybe 12, if the ones that ran don't make it. Good, Ruth said. They'll send more, Myra said quietly. Probably, but not today. They stood there, the three of them, surrounded by the evidence of what they'd done, what they'd become. Myra's hands were still shaking. She clenched them into fists, trying to make it stop. Colt noticed. Didn't say anything, just stood beside her, solid and steady, until the shaking eased. "We should bury them," Ruth said finally. "Why?" Myra asked. "Because leaving bodies around draws scavengers." "I meant why bury them at all? They came here to kill us." "Doesn't mean we have to be like them." Myra wanted to argue, but Ruth was right. Leaving bodies to rot in the sun would make them something they weren't ready to be yet. They spent the rest of the day digging, hard, brutal work under a merciless sun. By the time they finished, Myra's hands were raw and bleeding, her back screaming. They didn't mark the graves, didn't say words, just filled in the holes and walked away. That night they sat on the porch, too tired to move, too wired to sleep. The ranch felt different now. Marked, changed. "They'll come back," Ruth said. Not a question. "Yeah," Colt agreed. "When?" "Soon. Danner won't let this stand. We embarrassed him. Killed his second. He'll have to respond." "And when he does," Myra said, "he'll bring everyone." "Probably." They sat with that knowledge, heavy and unavoidable. "We could run," Ruth suggested. "All three of us. Disappear. Start over somewhere he'll never find us." "You think there's anywhere he won't look?" Myra asked. "No, but at least we'd be moving, harder to hit." Colt shook his head. "Running just delays it, and you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder waiting. Better than dying here." "Maybe. Maybe not." Myra stood, walked to the edge of the porch. The wind carried the smell of turned earth and blood. In the distance, the canyon where Bristle had found her stood silent and dark. "I'm not running," she said. Ruth sighed. "Myra, I'm not." She turns to face them. "I spent 2 years being moved around like a piece of property. Running when he said run. Stopping when he said stop. Living in fear every single day." Her voice hardened. "I'm done with that. If Danner wants me, he can come get me, and I'll be right here waiting." "That's suicide," Ruth said. "Maybe, but it's my choice." Colt studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay." "Okay?" Ruth stared at him. "That's it? You're just going to let her throw her life away?" "It's not my call. It's hers." "You're both insane." "Probably," Colt agreed. "But we're also done running. You want to leave, leave. No judgment. You've earned your freedom. Use it however you want." Ruth looked between them, jaw working. Finally she cursed, long and creative. "Fine. I'll stay. But when we're all dead, I'm haunting both of you." Despite everything, Myra smiled. "Deal." They spent the next 3 days preparing for war. Not the skirmish they'd just survived. Real war. Colt showed them how to make things that shouldn't be made, using materials that shouldn't be mixed. He didn't explain where he'd learned it. Didn't need to. The scars on his hands told the story. Ruth worked on intelligence, trying to figure out how many men Danner could actually field, what weapons they'd have, how they'd approach. "Best guess, he's got 15 men left," she said, studying her notes. "Maybe 20 if he calls in favors. They'll have rifles, pistols, probably dynamite." "Dynamite," Myra repeated. "He likes fire, likes making examples." "Can we counter that?" "Not really. We just have to make sure we're not where he thinks we are when it goes off." They moved supplies out of the house, scattering them in hidden caches around the property. Ammunition, food, water, medical supplies. If the house burned, they'd still have what they needed to keep fighting. Myra found herself working alongside Colt more often than not. He didn't talk much, but his presence was steadying. When the fear got too loud in her head, she'd look over and he'd be there, solid and unshakable, and it helped. One afternoon, they were reinforcing the barn when Colt said, "You know this might not work." "I know." "There's still time to change your mind. I could get you out, both of you. Put you on horses heading north before Danner even knows you're gone." "Why would you do that?" He was quiet for a moment, hammering nails with steady precision. "Because you deserve better than dying on this patch of dirt." "Maybe, but I also deserve to choose how I live, and I'm choosing this." "Why?" She set down the board she was holding, looked at him directly. "Because for the first time in my life, I'm not a victim. I'm not property. I'm not someone else's decision. I'm just me, making a choice." She paused. "That might not sound like much to you, but to me it's everything." Colt met her eyes, and something shifted in his expression, something soft and dangerous. "It sounds like everything to me, too," he said quietly. The moment stretched between them, thick with things unsaid. Then Bristle barked, sharp and urgent, and they both grabbed their rifles. But it was just a rider. One rider, coming fast, white cloth tied to his rifle barrel. Flag of truce. Hell, Colt muttered. They watched the rider approach, weapons ready but not raised. Ruth emerged from the house, rifle in hand. The rider stopped at the property line, maybe 50 yards out. Young guy, couldn't be more than 20, looking scared out of his mind. I got a message, he called out. From Danner. Speak, Colt shouted back. He wants to talk. Face to face, no guns, tomorrow at noon. Why would we agree to that? Because he's got something you want to see. The kid reached into his saddlebag, pulled something out, and held it up. Even from a distance, Myra could see what it was. A photograph. A girl, maybe 16, bound to a chair, eyes wide with terror. Ruth made a sound low in her throat. That's Emma. She ran 6 months ago. We thought she made it. She didn't, the kid said. Danner found her in Denver, brought her back. Says if you don't meet him tomorrow, he'll make sure everyone knows what happens to girls who run. Myra's hands clenched on her rifle. He's using her as bait. Yeah, Colt said. Question is, do we take it? We have to, Ruth said. We can't just leave her. It's a trap. I know, but what choice do we have? The kid was still sitting there, holding the photograph like a promise of horrors to come. Tell Danner we'll meet him, Myra called out. But if he hurts that girl before we get there, the deal's off, and we hunt him down like the animal he is. The kid nodded, shoved the photograph back in his bag, and rode off without another word. They stood in the yard, watching him disappear into the distance. This is bad, Ruth said. Yep. He's going to kill us all. Probably going to try. So what's the plan? Colt looked at Myra. She looked back. We go, Myra said. We meet him. We get the girl. And then we end this, one way or another. That night they didn't sleep. Just sat up planning, arguing, trying to find an angle that didn't end with all of them dead. By dawn, they had something. Not a good plan, but a plan. This is insane, Ruth said for the 10th time. You have a better idea? Myra asked. Run, hide, literally anything else. You're welcome to leave. I already told you I'm not leaving. Then stop complaining and help me check these loads. They worked in tense silence, preparing weapons, checking supplies, trying not to think too hard about what they were about to do. Colt came in from outside, face grim. Riders on the horizon, at least 20. 20, Ruth breathed. He brought everyone. Yeah, he's not planning to negotiate. Neither are we. They gathered their weapons, their courage, and walked out to face what was coming. The sun was climbing, hot and merciless. In the distance, a wall of dust rose as Danner's men approached. Myra checked her rifle one last time, then looked at Colt and Ruth. Whatever happens, she said, thank you for fighting, for staying, for giving me a chance to be more than what they made me. Save the speeches, Ruth said, but her voice was thick. We're not dead yet. Not yet, Colt agreed. Bristle sat at Myra's feet, watching the approaching riders with alert eyes. The dog had started all of this, found her in the dust, refused to leave her, brought her back to life. Now he'd see how it ended. The riders formed a line across the open ground, 20 men strong, armed and ready. In the center, mounted on a black horse, sat Danner himself. Myra had never seen him before, had only heard his voice, felt his presence like a weight on her chest. He was smaller than she'd imagined, ordinary looking, the kind of man you'd pass on the street without a second glance. But his eyes were dead, empty, like looking into a well with no bottom. He smiled when he saw her, a thin, cruel twist of lips. There she is, he called out, my lost property. I'm not your anything, Myra shouted back. We'll see about that. You ready to talk terms? Where's the girl? Danner gestured, and 2 of his men pulled Emma forward. She was bound, gagged, eyes streaming tears. Safe and sound, Danner said. For now. Let her go. Come get her. That wasn't the deal. I lied. His smile widened. Here's the real deal. You come with me right now, quiet and cooperative, and the girl lives. You refuse, and I shoot her in front of you. Then I burn this place to the ground and kill everyone you've ever spoken to. Your choice. Myra's jaw clenched. You're going to kill us anyway. Probably, But maybe I'll be kind about it if you cooperate. Maybe not. Like I said, your choice. Colt's hand touched Myra's shoulder. Don't. I have to. No, you don't. She's just a kid. So were you, 2 years ago. Myra looked at Emma, saw herself in that chair. Broken. Terrified. Waiting for someone to save her. No one had. But maybe she could be the someone this girl needed. She started forward. Colt grabbed her arm. Myra, don't do this. Let me go. No. Colt, please. He pulled her around to face him, eyes fierce. You walk out there, you die, and everything we fought for dies with you. If I don't, she dies. She might anyway. This is a trap. I know, but I have to try. Something broke in his expression. Why? Because someone tried for me. A dog who had no reason to care. A man who had every reason to turn away. They tried anyway. She pulled free. Now it's my turn. She walked forward, unarmed, hands visible. Danner watched her approach, smiling that dead smile. That's my girl. Always knew you'd come back. I'm not your girl. We'll fix that. She stopped 10 feet away. Let her go first. Not how this works. Then shoot me. But you're not getting what you want either way. Danner's smile faded. You've gotten brave. I've gotten tired of running, of being afraid, of men like you thinking you own the world. I do own my piece of it, including you. No, you don't. His hand moved toward his pistol. Myra didn't flinch, just stood there, staring him down. Last chance, Danner said. Come quietly, or watch everyone you care about die. Behind her, she heard Colt and Ruth moving into position. Bristle's low growl carried on the wind. Myra smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, like a woman who decided to burn the whole world down rather than live in it one more day as prey. Here's my last chance for you, she said. Ride away right now. Leave the girl. Don't ever come back, or find out what happens when you push someone past the point of caring whether they survive. Danner laughed. Actually laughed. You think you scare me? No. But I think what I represent does. Because if I can walk away, if I can fight back, if I can win, she stepped closer, then every girl you've ever taken will know they can too, and your whole empire falls apart. His face darkened, hand tightening on his pistol. That's why you came yourself, Myra continued, why you brought everyone, because you can't afford to let me live. Can't afford to let anyone see that you're not invincible. You talk too much. And you waited too long. She dove sideways just as gunfire erupted from behind her. The riders charged, and Myra dropped behind cover as bullets tore through the air above her head. Wood splintered. Dust exploded around her position. She counted to 3, rose up, fired. One rider jerked backward, clutching his shoulder. His horse veered off, throwing him into the dirt. 9 left. She ducked again as return fire shredded the fence post beside her. Bristle was barking, sharp and urgent, staying low like Colt had trained him. From the west, she heard the crack of Colt's rifle, steady, methodical, 1 shot every few seconds. From the canyon, Ruth's gun joined the chorus. The riders scattered, realizing too late they were caught in a crossfire. Ketchum was shouting orders, but the wind carried his words away. Myra reloaded, hand shaking but functional. She'd practiced this movement 1,000 times. Muscle memory took over where thought failed. Another rider went down. She couldn't tell if it was her shot or Ruth's. Didn't matter. 8. Then she heard it. The sharp crack of a tripwire snapping, followed by a man's scream. One of the traps, the boards with nails. The screaming continued, high and terrible. Myra felt nothing, no sympathy, no guilt, just cold satisfaction. Ketchum wheeled his horse around, face twisted with rage. Fall back! Fall back! The riders retreated, dragging their wounded with them. One man was left behind, the one who'd hit the trap, still screaming. Silence fell, broken only by the wounded man's cries. Myra stayed behind cover, breathing hard, rifle ready, waiting for the second wave. But it didn't come. After what felt like hours, Colt appeared beside her, moving low and quiet. You hit? No, you? I'm fine, Ruth. As if summoned, Ruth materialized from the direction of the canyon, streaked with dust, eyes bright with adrenaline. Got 2 of them, she said. Maybe 3. Hard to tell. They'll be back, Colt said. That was just a test. Then we passed, Myra said. For now. They retreated to the house, moving quickly, watching the horizon. The wounded man's screaming had stopped. Either he'd passed out or someone had put him out of his misery. Inside, they reloaded, checked weapons, drank water. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say. Myra's hands were steady now. The shaking had passed, replaced by something colder, something that felt almost like calm. You did good out there, Ruth said quietly. I shot a man. Yes, you did. I don't feel bad about it. You shouldn't. He came here to hurt you. You defended yourself. Myra looked at her rifle, at the blood on her hands from where she'd scraped them on the rough wood. This is what winning looks like, isn't it? Blood and dirt and doing things you can't take back. Yes, Ruth said. It is. Colt checked the perimeter from the window. They're regrouping, half-mile out. How many? All of them. They're calling in reinforcements. How long do we have? Hour, maybe 2. Ruth stood. Then we use it. Check the traps, reload everything, eat something if you can keep it down. They moved like a unit, practiced and efficient. Myra found herself checking angles, calculating fields of fire, thinking 3 moves ahead. When had she become this person, this fighter? Somewhere between the canyon and now. Somewhere in the weeks of training and preparation. Somewhere in the moment she'd decided she was done being prey. An hour later, the sun was dropping toward the horizon when they came in. This time there were 20 riders, maybe more. They spread out wide, approaching from all 3 directions at once. Smart, Colt said. Force us to split our attention. Can we hold? Myra asked. We're about to find out. They took their positions again. Myra at the main road, Ruth at the canyon, Colt on the west range. Each of them alone. Each of them outnumbered. The riders came slower this time, more cautious. They'd learned. Myra waited, finger resting beside the trigger, breathing steady. Bristle was pressed against her leg, tense and ready. When the first rider crossed into range, she fired. He went down. The others scattered, returning fire, but they were shooting at shadows now. Myra moved between positions, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. From the west, she heard Colt's rifle. 3 quick shots, then silence, then 3 more. From the canyon, Ruth's gun cracked intermittently, each shot deliberate. The riders tried to push forward, hit another trap. 2 horses went down screaming, throwing their riders. 1 man didn't get up. Ketchum's voice carried across the battlefield. Burn them out! Myra's blood went cold. She saw them then. 3 riders with torches, galloping toward the house. Colt! She screamed. His rifle spoke. 1 rider fell. Then another. But the 3rd made it through, hurling his torch onto the roof. Flames caught, hungry and bright in the dry wood. No, Myra whispered. She broke cover, running toward the house. Bullets kicked up dust around her feet. Bristle ran beside her, barking frantically. Colt appeared from the west, sprinting. Get back! The house! Forget the house! Get to the barn! Ruth emerged from the canyon path, firing as she ran. Cover fire, buying them seconds. They made it to the barn as the roof of the house collapsed in a shower of sparks and flame. Everything inside, Myra's few possessions, Colt's careful solitude, the place that had become something like home, gone. She wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to put a bullet in every single one of them. Instead, she reloaded. New plan, Colt said, breathing hard. We make our stand here. Barn's got stone foundation. Won't burn as easy. We're trapped, Ruth said. No. We're concentrated. They want us? They can come get us. The riders regrouped, emboldened by the burning house. They started to close in, a tightening noose. Myra counted 15 still mounted, another 4 on foot. Too many. We can't hold against that many, she said. We don't have to hold forever, just long enough. Long enough for what? Colt's smile was grim. For them to realize this is costing more than we're worth. But the riders kept coming. They set up a perimeter around the barn, just out of rifle range. Waiting. Ketchum rode forward, staying careful. You've got 30 seconds to send the girl out, he shouted. After that, we burn this barn too and shoot anything that runs. Myra looked at Colt. Let me go. End this. No. Colt. I said no. People are going to die. They already have. Theirs and maybe ours, but you're not walking out there. It's my choice, and I'm making mine. You want to shoot me to get past? You'll have to do it. They stared at each other, both breathing hard. Ruth interrupted. He's right. You go out there, you think they'll just let you leave? They'll make an example of you, slowly, and then they'll come back and kill us anyway. So what do? We fight, Colt said simply. Ketchum's voice came again. Time's up. The riders moved forward. Colt grabbed something from the corner of the barn. A bottle stuffed with a rag. Myra recognized it from their preparations. Get ready to run, he said. He lit the rag, stepped into the doorway, and threw. The bottle arced through the air, trailing flame. It hit the ground in the middle of the riders and exploded, scattering fire. Horses screamed. Men dove for cover. In the chaos, Colt grabbed Myra's arm. North Cliff, now! They ran, Ruth right behind them, as bullets tore through the air. The cliff face Colt had said was impassable loomed ahead. There's no way up, Myra shouted. There is if you know where to look. He led them to a narrow crack in the rock, barely wide enough for a person. Up! Go! Myra hesitated. The crack was dark, tight, terrifying. Move! Ruth shoved her forward. She climbed, hands scrabbling for purchase, feet slipping on loose stone. Behind her she heard Ruth, then Colt, then gunfire, echoing off the cliff. The crack opened into a narrow ledge 20 feet up. Myra pulled herself onto it, gasping, and reached down to help Ruth. Colt came last, breathing hard. Blood stained his shoulder. You're hit, Myra said. Just grazed. I'm fine. They were trapped on the ledge, backs to stone, nothing but air in front. Below, the riders searched the barn, realized their prey had escaped. It took them less than a minute to spot the cliff. There! Someone shouted. Bullets sparked off the rock face, but the angle was bad. Most shots went wide. Can they reach us? Ruth asked. Not easily, Colt said. But we can't stay here forever either. So, what? The sound of hoofbeats interrupted her. Different from before. Coming from the east. Myra's heart sank. Reinforcements. More riders. But when they crested the hill, she saw something that made no sense. A woman rode at the front. Behind her, a dozen others. All women. All armed. They charged into Danner's men without hesitation. No warning, no negotiation, just fury and gunfire. The riders, already disorganized from the chase, scattered. Some tried to fight back. Others ran. Ketchum wheeled his horse, trying to rally his men. Stand your ground, they're just... He never finished. One of the women put a bullet through his chest. He fell from his horse, hit the ground hard, and didn't move. The fight became a slaughter. Danner's men, expecting an easy target, found themselves caught between the cliff and an enemy they hadn't planned for. It was over in minutes. Myra watched from the ledge, unable to process what she was seeing. When the dust settled, the woman who'd led the charge looked up at the cliff. You can come down now, she called. They're gone. Colt went first, moving carefully, checking for traps. Myra and Ruth followed. At the bottom, the woman dismounted. She was tall, scarred, with gray threading through her dark hair. Her eyes were hard, but not cruel. Name's Catherine, she said. We heard Danner was making a move, figured we'd even the odds. Who are you? Myra asked. Women who got tired of running, heard rumors about this place, about a girl who fought back, thought maybe it was time we did the same. Catherine gestured to the others. We've all got history with Danner, figured we owed him a visit. Ruth stepped forward, staring. I know you. You were... 5 years ago, yeah. Escaped different than you did. Catherine's smile was cold. Been building something ever since, waiting for the right moment. This was the moment? Colt asked. Seemed like it. Word was, Danner was coming here with most of his men. Too good an opportunity to pass up. Myra looked at the bodies scattered across the ground. At the women still mounted, rifles ready. At the burning house in the distance. Is he dead? Danner? Catherine shook her head. He wasn't with them, probably back at his camp waiting for word. Then it's not over. No, but it's a start. The sun was setting now, painting everything in shades of red and orange. The ranch looked like a battlefield. Because that's what it was. Myra felt exhaustion creeping in, the adrenaline finally draining away. Her hands started shaking again. Colt put a hand on her shoulder. You did good. I killed people. Yes, you did. And they were here to kill or take you. You made the choice you had to make. She wanted to believe that, wanted to feel justified, but all she felt was tired and dirty and changed in ways she couldn't name. Catherine approached. You've got a choice to make now. What choice? Whether you want to finish this. Danner's wounded, but he's not gone. He'll rebuild, come back, unless someone stops him permanently. You want me to help you hunt him down, Myra said. I want you to help us end him. All of us, together. Catherine looked at Ruth, then back to Myra. This stops being personal and becomes something bigger. A message. That women like us don't have to run anymore. Don't have to hide. That we can fight and win. Myra looked at Colt. What do you think? It's not my fight, it's yours. It became your fight when you pulled me out of that canyon. Maybe, but the choice is still yours. She turned to Ruth. You've been running longer than me. What would you do? Ruth's voice was quiet but certain. I'd end it. I'm done running. Myra looked around at the women Catherine had brought, saw her own story reflected in every scarred face, every hard eye, every weapon held with familiar ease. How many more were out there? How many more girls traded like property, beaten into submission, taught that survival meant silence? She thought about the girl she'd been in that canyon, broken, bleeding, begging a dog not to leave her. That girl was gone, had died somewhere between then and now. What stood in her place was something different, something harder, something that had tasted violence and found she could survive it, could wield it. Where is he? She asked Catherine. 2 days north, camp near the river. Maybe 30 men left now that we took out his main force. 30's still a lot. We're 23. With you three, that's 26. Better odds than you had here. Myra looked at the burning house, at the blood-soaked ground, at Bristle, sitting patiently beside her, fur matted with dust. I want to sleep first, she said finally, and eat, and figure out what the hell I'm doing. Catherine nodded. Fair. We'll camp here tonight. Move at first light. As the women set up camp, Myra walked to where the house had stood. Just embers now, smoking in the twilight. Everything she'd started to build here. Gone. Colt found her standing there. I'm sorry, she said, about your home. It was just a building. It was more than that. Maybe. But buildings can be replaced. You can't. She turned to him. Why do you care so much? Really? I need to understand. He was quiet for a long time, staring at the ruins. I watched a lot of people die in the war. Good people. People with families, with futures. And I couldn't save any of them. Orders said move forward, so we moved forward. And they died. And I kept living. His jaw tightened. When Bristle brought me to you, I had a choice. Walk away, let nature take its course. Or try. For once, just try to save someone. He looked at her. You made it worth it. Myra felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, opening. I don't know what I'm doing, she said. I don't know if I can do this. Hunt down Danner, kill him, become whatever that makes me. You don't have to know. You just have to decide if you can live with walking away. Could she? Could she run, rebuild somewhere else, spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when he'd find her again? Or wondering about all the other girls still trapped in his circuit, waiting for someone brave enough to fight? I can't walk away, she said quietly. I know. Will you come with me? Where you go, I go. Made that choice weeks ago. Ruth appeared out of the darkness. Catherine's asking about plans. You ready to talk strategy? Myra took a breath. Let it out slow. Yeah, let's end this. They gathered around a fire, all 26 of them. Catherine spread a rough map in the dirt, marking positions. Danner's camp is here, in a box canyon, one way in, one way out. Normally, that'd be suicide to attack. But, Myra prompted, but there's a ridge overlooking it, 50 feet up. Good cover, clear shots. We put half our people up there, the other half blocks the exit. Trap them the same way they've trapped so many of us. He'll have sentries, Ruth said. We take them out quiet. Before dawn, then we move. One of the other women spoke up. Her name was Anna, young, maybe 18. What about the men who surrender? Do we let them go? Catherine's face was stone. That's not my call to make. Every woman here gets a vote. The debate was short, brutal. In the end, they agreed. Men who dropped their weapons and walked away lived. Men who fought died. Simple as that. Myra found herself nodding along. When had mercy become conditional? When had she become someone who could weigh lives on a scale and find some wanting? Somewhere between the canyon and now. Somewhere in the fire and the blood and the choice to stop being a victim. They planned through the night, every detail, every contingency, who went where, who covered what. Signals. Fallback positions. Escape routes if it all went wrong. By the time the sun rose, they were ready. The women packed their gear in silence, checked weapons, mounted horses. Myra found herself riding beside Catherine at the front, Ruth on her other side, Colt bringing up the rear. They rode north, eating dust, watching horizons. Nobody spoke much. There wasn't much to say. 2 days felt like 2 years. They camped rough at night, rotating watches, sleeping in shifts. Myra barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of Danner's face, of putting a bullet through it. On the second morning, Catherine called a halt. Canyon's just ahead. We go on foot from here. They left the horses with 4 women to guard them. The rest moved forward, spreading out, using the terrain for cover. The ridge overlooking Danner's camp was exactly where Catherine had said it would be. They climbed it in silence, weapons ready. From the top, Myra could see everything. The camp was larger than she'd expected. Maybe 40 men, not 30. Tents scattered throughout the canyon floor. Fires burning low. Sentries posted at the entrance, and in the center, sitting outside the largest tent, was Danner. Myra hadn't seen him in months. Had tried to forget what he looked like, but seeing him now brought everything rushing back. The first time he'd looked at her like property. The first time his hand had struck her face. The smell of his breath when he'd leaned close and told her she belonged to him now. Her hands tightened on her rifle. Easy, Colt murmured beside her. Stay focused, Catherine was signaling. The women on the ridge took their positions. The others moved to block the canyon exit. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the canyon walls gold. Catherine looked at Myra. Your call, when you're ready. Myra sighted down her rifle, found Danner in the scope, watched him drink coffee, laugh at something one of his men said. So casual, so comfortable in his power. She thought about the girl in the canyon, the one who'd begged a dog not to leave her. She thought about all the other girls, the ones who hadn't made it, the ones still trapped. She thought about Ruth, Catherine, Anna, all these women who'd found the courage to fight back. And she pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the canyon like thunder. Danner's coffee cup exploded in his hand. He jerked backward, staring at his bleeding fingers, not yet understanding. Then chaos erupted. The women on the ridge opened fire. Men scrambled for weapons, for cover, for understanding. The sentries at the entrance went down before they could raise an alarm. Danner was shouting orders, but his voice was lost in the gunfire. Men tried to run, found the exit blocked, tried to climb the canyon walls, found themselves exposed and vulnerable. Some dropped their weapons, raised their hands, walked slowly toward the exit with their hands up. The women let them pass, kept their guns trained but didn't fire. Others fought, died. It wasn't clean, wasn't easy. Bullets don't discriminate. 2 of Catherine's women went down. 1 didn't get up. But the numbers were overwhelming. Danner's men, caught unprepared, were being cut down. Myra kept firing, mechanically. Each shot a choice, each death a decision she'd have to live with. She saw Danner making for a horse, saw him mount, saw him try to flee. She stood, sighted, fired. The shot took him in the leg. He fell from the horse, hit the ground screaming. Myra was moving before she thought, scrambling down the ridge, rifle in hand. Colt was right behind her, shouting something she couldn't hear over the blood pounding in her ears. She reached the canyon floor as the last of the gunfire died away. Bodies everywhere, wounded men crying, surrendered men being herded together, and Danner, on the ground, clutching his leg, blood soaking through his fingers. His eyes found hers, widened. "You," he gasped. "You're supposed to be dead." Disappointing, isn't it? She walked toward him slowly, rifle raised, finger on the trigger. He tried to scoot backward, face pale with pain and fear. Wait, we can make a deal. I've got money, connections, whatever you want. I want you to understand something, Myra said quietly. I'm not your property. I never was. None of them were. Please. She shot him in the other leg. His scream echoed off the canyon walls. That's for every girl you traded, every life you destroyed. She worked the bolt, chambered another round. Danner was crying now, begging, promising anything if she'd just let him live. Myra felt nothing, no satisfaction, no rage, just cold certainty. She raised the rifle to her shoulder. Wait, Colt said behind her. She didn't lower the gun. Don't tell me not to do this. I'm not. I'm just saying, make sure it's what you want. There's no taking it back. I know. You can walk away right now. Let someone else do it. Let him bleed out slow. You don't have to carry this. Myra looked at Danner, broken and bleeding in the dust, reduced to what he'd always been beneath the power and the violence. Just a man, mortal, afraid. She could walk away, let Catherine or Ruth pull the trigger, keep her hands technically clean. But that felt like cowardice. This was her fight, her choice, her responsibility. I'm sure, she said. Colt stepped back. Myra looked Danner in the eyes. Wanted him to see her. Really see her. Not as property, not as a victim, as the person who was ending him. My name is Myra, she said, and I want you to take that with you to whatever hell is waiting. She pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the morning air. Danner jerked once, then went still. Silence fell over the canyon, complete and absolute. Myra lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. She'd just killed a man in cold blood, had looked him in the eyes, and ended his life without hesitation. She waited for guilt, for horror, for regret. It didn't come. What came instead was something quieter, something that felt almost like peace. Catherine approached, placed a hand on Myra's shoulder. It's done. Yeah. How do you feel? Myra thought about it, really thought about it. Free, she said finally. Around them, the other women were finishing up, tending wounds, dealing with prisoners, securing the camp. Ruth appeared, streaked with powder smoke, eyes bright. We did it. We did. What now? Good question. What came after revenge, after justice, after the moment you'd been building toward for months? Myra looked around the canyon, at the women who'd fought beside her, at the camp that had been a place of suffering and was now just empty tents and scattered supplies. Now we burn it, she said. All of it. Erase what this place was. Make sure it can never be that again. Catherine nodded. And then? Then we rebuild. Somewhere better, somewhere safe. Somewhere people like us can go and know they won't be hurt again. That's ambitious. So was this. They spent the rest of the day destroying Danner's camp, burned the tents, freed the few women they found still being held, redistributed supplies. Let the surrendered men go with a warning, spread the word. This circuit was done. These women were done being hunted. By sunset, nothing remained but ash and memory. The women gathered one last time. Some would head their own ways. Some would stay together. Catherine was building something up north, a community, a refuge. You're welcome there, she told Myra. All three of you, help us make it real. Myra looked at Colt, at Ruth, at Bristle, sitting patiently at her feet like always. What do you think? She asked them. Ruth smiled. I think I'm tired of running. Wouldn't mind having something to build instead. Colt shrugged. Ranch is gone anyway. Might as well help make something new. Myra felt something warm spread through her chest. Not quite hope, not quite happiness. Something more solid, more real. Okay, she said to Catherine. We're in. They rode north together, a convoy of survivors becoming something more. Becoming builders. Becoming the foundation of something that hadn't existed before. The journey took a week. Long days in the saddle, sleeping under stars, sharing stories around fires. Myra learned about the women around her. Their pasts, their pain, their plans for the future. Anna had been 14 when she was sold, had spent 3 years in Danner's circuit before escaping. Catherine had lost a sister to the trade. had spent 5 years hunting the men responsible. Ruth had a daughter somewhere, taken from her. She didn't know if the girl was alive, but she'd never stopped looking. Every story was different. Every story was the same. When they finally reached Catherine's settlement, Myra understood why she'd fought so hard to build it. It sat in a valley between two ridges, protected, defensible. Already there were buildings going up, gardens planted, livestock penned, women and children everywhere, working, laughing, living without fear. "It's not much yet," Catherine said, "but it's ours, and it's growing." Myra dismounted, looked around, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Over the next few months, they worked. Myra, Colt, and Ruth became part of the community, helped build houses, taught people to shoot, set up defenses. More women came. Word spread about a place where nobody owned you, where you could start over, where strength was shared instead of hoarded. Not all of them stayed. Some needed to keep moving, needed to find their own peace elsewhere. But enough stayed that the settlement grew, became something real, something permanent. Myra found herself taking on responsibilities she'd never imagined. Teaching young girls to defend themselves, planning expansions, mediating disputes, building something that mattered. The nightmares still came sometimes, but they were quieter now, more memory than prophecy. One evening, 6 months after Danner's death, Myra stood on the ridge overlooking the settlement. Colt found her there, Bristle trotting beside him. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "Just thinking about how far we've come." "We?" "All of us. The women here, me, even you, whether you'll admit it or not." He smiled slightly. "Maybe." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the valley. "Do you ever regret it?" Myra asked. "Helping me? All of this?" "No, do you?" "No. But sometimes I wonder who I would have been, if things had been different, if my father hadn't sold me, if Danner had never existed, if I just had a normal life. You think you'd be happier?" "I think I'd be different. Softer, maybe. Less sharp around the edges." "Soft things don't survive what you survived." "I know. That's what scares me sometimes, that I had to become this to stay alive." Colt was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Someone who took everything bad that happened and turned it into something good. This place exists because you fought back. Those girls down there are learning to defend themselves because you did it first. That girl in the canyon who begged a dog not to leave her, she didn't just survive. She became someone who makes sure other people survive too." Myra felt her throat tighten. "That's a lot of pressure." "You don't have to carry it alone. That's the whole point of this place." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just old and stubborn." She laughed. Actually laughed. "You're not that old." "Feel like it sometimes." Ruth found them as full dark fell. "Town meeting in 10 minutes. Catherine wants to talk about the northern fence expansion." "We'll be there," Myra said. As Ruth walked away, Colt said, "You're good at this. The leadership thing." "I don't feel good at it." Nobody who's actually good at it ever does. They walked back to the settlement together, to the meeting hall where 24 women waited, where decisions would be made, plans would be formed, futures would be built. Myra had killed a man, had watched others die, had become someone capable of violence when violence was necessary. But she'd also become someone capable of building, of teaching, of creating safety for people who'd never had it before. Maybe that was what redemption looked like. Not erasing what you'd done, not pretending you were still the person you'd been before. Just choosing, every day, to be someone who made the world a little less brutal than you'd found it. The meeting ran late. Debates about resources, about security, about how to handle the constant stream of new arrivals. Myra listened, offered opinions, helped find compromises. This was her life now. Not running, not hiding, not fighting for survival. Building something worth surviving for. When the meeting finally ended, she walked back to the small house she shared with Colt and Ruth. Bristle was waiting on the porch, tail wagging. Inside, they ate a simple dinner, talked about the day, made plans for tomorrow. Normal things, human things, things the girl in the canyon had thought she'd never have again. Later, lying in bed, Myra stared at the ceiling and thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every brutal step, every impossible choice. She wouldn't wish it on anyone, wouldn't choose it if she could go back and change things. But she also wouldn't trade who she'd become, or what she'd built, or the people she'd saved by refusing to stay broken. Tomorrow she'd wake up and do it again. Teach another girl to shoot, help build another house, make this settlement a little stronger, a little safer, a little more permanent. The work would never be finished. There would always be more people who needed help, more threats to guard against, more battles to fight. But for the first time since her father had looked her in the eye and sold her future, Myra felt like she had one. A future, a purpose, a home. Not because someone had given it to her, but because she'd fought for it, bled for it, killed for it when she had to, and built something better from the ashes. Outside, the wind moved through the valley, peaceful, quiet. Myra closed her eyes and, for once, slept without nightmares. The girl who'd died in the canyon was gone, would never come back. But the woman who'd risen from that death was still here, still fighting, still building, still free. And that, she thought as sleep finally took her, was worth everything it had cost. 2 years passed like water over stone, wearing away the sharp edges, leaving something smoother but fundamentally changed. The settlement that had started as a dozen tents in desperate hope had become something you could almost call a town. 43 permanent structures now. A schoolhouse where children learned to read and women learned trades. A clinic run by a former nurse named Margaret who'd escaped a circuit 3 states over. Gardens that actually produced food. Livestock that thrived. A well that didn't run dry. And walls, not prison walls. Protection. Myra stood at the gate one morning, watching a wagon approach. She was 23 now, though some days she felt 50. The rifle across her shoulders was as familiar as her own hands. She didn't carry it out of fear anymore. Just habit. Preparedness. The wagon contained a family, mother, father, 3 kids. The mother had a black eye turning yellow. The father looked beaten down in ways that had nothing to do with fists. "We heard there's a place," the mother said quietly, "where people can start over." "You heard right," Myra said. "You running from something?" "Someone. My brother. He's not a good man." Myra nodded, understanding everything that wasn't being said. "You're safe here, but you work. Everyone works. We don't carry anyone. We can work." "Then come on in. Ruth will get you settled." She watched them pass through the gate, saw the moment the mother's shoulders relaxed fractionally. That moment when you realized maybe, just maybe, you might actually be safe. Myra knew that moment well, remembered it from her own arrival here. The disbelief, the waiting for the other shoe to drop, the slow acceptance that this place was real. Colt found her an hour later working on the northern fence. Her hands were blistered from the hammer, but the work felt good, tangible, real. "New arrivals?" he asked. "Family, running from an abusive brother." "You let them in?" "Why wouldn't I?" "Just checking. You're getting soft." She snorted. "I shot a coyote this morning for getting too close to the chickens. Not that soft." "Fair point." He picked up a fence post, held it steady while she hammered. "Catherine wants to talk. About expansion. We can barely manage what we have." "That's what I said. She thinks we're ready." "What do you think?" Colt was quiet for a moment, studying the valley below. "I think we've built something good here. Something worth protecting. And I think if we don't grow, we'll stagnate. People need purpose, need to feel like they're building towards something." "When did you become a philosopher?" "I'm not. I just pay attention." They worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of hammer and wood filling the space between them. This was comfortable now, easy. 2 years had worn away the awkwardness, the uncertainty about what they were to each other. Friends, definitely. Partners in building this place. Sometimes, late at night when the nightmares came, something more. But neither of them pushed, neither of them needed labels. "You ever think about before?" Myra asked. "Your ranch, the quiet." "Sometimes. But I wouldn't go back." "No? That wasn't living. That was hiding." He looked at her. "This is better." Ruth appeared over the ridge, breathing hard. "We've got a problem." Myra's hand went to her rifle automatically. "What kind?" 3 men at the south gate. They're not attacking, just standing there, waiting. "For what?" "They said they want to talk to the woman who killed Danner." Myra's blood went cold. She'd known this moment would come eventually, had prepared for it. But knowing and experiencing were different things. "I'll go," she said. "I'm coming with you," Colt said. Not a question. "So am I," Ruth added. They walked to the south gate together. By the time they arrived, a small crowd had gathered. Defensive, protective. These women had built this place together. They weren't about to let strangers threaten it. The three men were exactly what Myra expected. Hard-looking, armed, dangerous. But their weapons were holstered, hands visible, non-threatening posture. The leader was older, maybe 40, with scars that told stories he probably didn't share. "You, Myra?" he called out. "Depends on who's asking." "Name's Cole. We worked for Danner before." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hands moved toward weapons. "Easy," Myra said. Then to Cole, "You've got 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't shoot you where you stand." "Because we're not here for revenge. We're here to talk." "About what?" "About the circuit you broke. About what happened after." Myra studied him, looking for the trap, the angle. "What happened after?" "Chaos. Different men trying to take over what Danner built, fighting each other, getting more violent, more desperate." Cole's face was grim. "It's worse now than it was before, and we're part of the problem. So why come here?" "Because we want to stop, but we don't know how. We've spent years being the kind of men who hurt people. We've got blood on our hands that won't wash off. And we keep doing it because we don't know what else to do." One of the other men spoke up. "We heard about this place, about women who got out, who built something different. We thought maybe, if there's a way for them, maybe there's a way for us too." Myra laughed, sharp and bitter. "You want redemption? From us? From the people whose lives you destroyed?" "No," Cole said quietly. "We don't deserve redemption. We know that. But maybe we can do something useful before we die. Work the fields, build walls, protect people instead of hurting them. Whatever you need." "Why would I trust you?" "You shouldn't. We wouldn't trust us either, but you could use us. We know how those men out there think, know their tactics. We could help you prepare, help you stay safe. And if we step out of line even once, you put a bullet in us, and that's fair." The silence was heavy, dangerous. Catherine had joined the crowd. "Myra, this is your call. He's asking for you." Myra looked at these men, saw her own journey reflected in reverse. She'd gone from victim to survivor to fighter to builder. Could someone travel that road backward? From perpetrator to, what? Something better? Something redeemable? "I need to think," she said finally. "Make camp outside the walls. Don't come any closer. I'll have an answer by morning." Cole nodded. "Fair enough." They retreated. The crowd dispersed slowly, but the tension remained. That night, Myra called a meeting. Everyone with a stake in the settlement's future. 27 women, 3 men who'd proven themselves over time, and Myra, standing at the center, trying to figure out the right choice. "They could be lying," Anna said. "Could be a trap." "Could be," Myra agreed. "But if they wanted to attack, why announce themselves? Why ask permission?" "Because they're smart," Ruth countered. "Get inside the walls, learn our defenses, strike when we're vulnerable." "Or," Catherine said slowly, "they're telling the truth, and we have an opportunity to turn enemies into allies." "They hurt people like us," one of the women said. "How do we just forgive that?" "We don't," Myra said. "Forgiveness isn't the point. The question is whether we can use them, whether they can do more good here than harm." Colt spoke up from the back. "I've known men like that, soldiers who did terrible things because that's what soldiers did. Some of them couldn't come back from it, but some could, with work, with purpose, with people willing to give them a chance." "You think we should let them in?" Ruth asked. "I think Myra should decide. This is her story more than any of ours." All eyes turned to her, waiting. Myra thought about the girl in the canyon, about Danner, about every man who'd ever hurt her, owned her, treated her like property. She thought about who she'd become, the violence she'd committed, the lives she'd taken. If she could change, could they? "Here's what we do," she said finally. "They work outside the walls for 3 months. Hard labor, building the outer defenses. They sleep in tents. They don't come inside without escort. They're watched every second. After 3 months, we evaluate. If they've proven themselves, we talk again. If they've caused any problems, they leave. or die. Their choice. That's generous, Catherine said. That's strategic. If they're serious, we get labor and intelligence. If they're not, we've lost nothing and gained information about what we're up against. The vote was close, 16-11 in favor, but it carried. Myra delivered the terms to Cole at dawn. He listened without interrupting, then nodded. We accept. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just work. And if you or your men lay one hand on anyone here, I'll kill you myself. Understood. Over the next 3 months, Myra watched them. Everyone did. The 3 men worked from sunup to sundown, building fences, digging irrigation ditches, hauling stone, never complaining, never asking for more than water and basic food. Cole kept his word, shared information about the remaining circuit operations, locations, numbers, tactics, all of it verified by Ruth's contacts. All of it accurate. Slowly, suspicion began to ease. Not trust. Not yet. But acknowledgement that maybe they were serious. One evening, Myra found Cole sitting alone, staring at his hands. Something wrong? She asked. He looked up, surprised. Just thinking about all the things these hands have done, all the people they've hurt. You want me to feel sorry for you? No. I want to understand how you live with it, the violence, the killing. How do you look at yourself and not see a monster? Myra sat down across from him. You want the truth? Please. Some days I do see a monster. Some days I remember Danner on the ground, bleeding, begging, and I remember how good it felt to pull that trigger, how easy it was. And I wonder what that makes me. What do you tell yourself? That I had a choice, be a victim or be a fighter. Let him keep hurting people or stop him. I chose to stop him. The cost was my innocence, my belief that I was a good person who'd never hurt anyone. She met his eyes. But I'm still here, still building, still trying to make something good out of all that bad. That's the difference. What difference? Between someone who hurt people because they could and someone who hurt people because they had to. You tell me which one you are. Cole was quiet for a long time. I want to be the second kind, but I spent years being the first. I don't know if that's something you can come back from. Neither do I, but you're here trying. That counts for something. Does it? Ask me in 3 months. The 3 months passed. When evaluation time came, the vote was unanimous. The men could stay, not as guests, as members of the community, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. Cole cried when Myra told him, actual tears running down his scarred face. I didn't think, he started, then stopped. Thank you. Don't make me regret it. I won't, I swear. He kept that promise. Over the next year, he became one of the settlement's most valuable members. The other 2 men did the same. They trained the community in defense, shared their knowledge, worked harder than anyone, and slowly, something impossible happened. Healing. Not complete, not perfect. The scars remained. The memories didn't fade, but the sharp edges dulled. The constant fear receded. The settlement became what Catherine had always envisioned, a place where people could become something better than their worst moments. Myra found herself changing too. The anger that had fueled her for so long began to ease. Not disappearing, just transforming into something more productive, more forward-looking. She started teaching, not just defense, but reading, writing, skills that gave people options beyond survival. One afternoon, a girl no older than Myra had been when Danner took her appeared at the gate, alone, terrified, barely alive. Myra recognized herself in that girl's eyes, the same desperate hope, the same disbelief that safety might be real. She brought the girl inside personally, fed her, bandaged her wounds, sat with her while she cried. You're safe now, Myra said quietly. That's what they always say, right before they hurt you again. I know, I said the same thing once, to a man who pulled me out of a canyon and asked for nothing in return. She gestured around the settlement. This is real. You're home if you want to be. The girl's name was Sarah. Over the following weeks, Myra watched her travel the same road, fear to hope to tentative trust. Learning to fight, learning to build, learning that strength wasn't something men gave you or took away. It was something you forged yourself. 3 years after killing Danner, Myra stood at the same ridge where she'd once watched the settlement take shape. It had grown beyond her wildest expectations. Nearly 100 people now, real buildings, real infrastructure, real governance with elected leaders and fair laws. She wasn't the leader, had stepped back from that role a year ago. Let Catherine and a council take over the daily operations. Myra's work was different now. Training, teaching, helping new arrivals find their footing. Colt joined her on the ridge, moving slower than he used to. A fall from a horse 6 months back had left him with a limp he insisted didn't bother him. Thinking? He asked. Always. About? About how far we've come, how many people we've helped, whether it's enough. Enough for what? To balance the scales? The people I've hurt, the violence, the killing. Can you ever do enough good to make up for that? Colt was quiet for a moment. Wrong question. What's the right one? Not whether you've done enough. Whether you're still doing it, still helping, still building. Redemption isn't a destination, it's a direction. Myra smiled. When did you get so wise? Told you, I'm just old. We're the same age. Then we're both old. Bristle appeared, grayer now, slower, but still faithful, still present. He'd been there at the beginning, seemed right he was here now. Ruth found them as the sun was setting. Meeting in an hour, we're voting on whether to establish a second settlement further north. Catherine thinks we're ready. What do you think? Myra asked. I think we've proven something here. That people who've been broken can rebuild. That violence doesn't have to define us. That there's another way. Ruth looked out at the valley. I think we should spread that as far as we can. The meeting that night was longer than most. Debates about resources, about risk, about whether they could manage 2 locations. In the end, the vote passed. They would establish a second settlement, and Myra would lead the expedition north, not as a commander, as a guide. Someone who'd walked the path and could show others the way. She left 2 months later with 20 volunteers, young and old, women and men, people who'd been victims and people who'd been perpetrators, all of them choosing to build something better. The journey took 3 weeks. They found a valley similar to the first one, protected, fertile, empty of threats, and they started building. This time, Myra knew what to do, how to set up defenses without making it feel like a prison, how to establish rules that protected without controlling, how to create a community that welcomed survivors without enabling dependency. 6 months later, the second settlement was functioning, self-sufficient, safe. Myra returned to the first settlement to find it thriving. New faces, new buildings. The schoolhouse had expanded. The clinic had added 2 more nurses. Sarah, the girl Myra had welcomed 3 years ago, was now teaching younger girls to shoot, passing on the lessons she'd learned, becoming someone who helped others find their strength. The circle was complete, or beginning again. Hard to tell the difference. That night, Myra sat with Colt and Ruth on the porch of the house they'd built together. Not family, not exactly, but something just as strong, something forged in fire and blood, and the choice to keep going when giving up would have been easier. You ever miss it? Ruth asked. The simple days when it was just about survival? No, Myra said. Simple isn't always better. This is messy and complicated and hard. But it matters. That's worth more than simple. Think we've changed the world? Colt asked. The world? No, but we've changed this corner of it. And everyone who comes through here goes out and changes another corner. Maybe that's enough. Is it? Ruth pressed. Enough for you? Myra thought about that, really thought about it. She thought about the girl who'd bled into the canyon dust, begging a dog not to leave her. About the woman who'd learned to fight, to kill, to survive at any cost. About the person she'd become after that. Someone who chose building over destroying, teaching over hoarding, opening doors instead of closing them. Yeah, she said finally, it's enough. Not because the work is finished, it'll never be finished, but because I'm doing it, because we all are. That's all anyone can do. Make their corner of the world a little less brutal. Help the people they can help. Build something that lasts beyond their own life. Bristle laid his head on her lap, and she scratched behind his ears. The dog who'd started everything. Who'd refused to leave her alone in that canyon. Who'd brought Colt running and set this entire chain of events in motion. Good boy, she murmured. Good boy. The years continued to pass. The settlements grew. More were established. Word spread about places where people who'd been broken could rebuild, where violence wasn't the only language, where strength meant lifting others up, not pushing them down. Not everyone who came stayed. Some people were too damaged. Some couldn't let go of their anger. Some just needed a safe place to catch their breath before moving on to whatever came next. That was okay. Myra had learned that you couldn't save everyone, couldn't fix everyone. Sometimes the best you could do was open a door and let people choose whether to walk through it. 5 years after Danner's death, Myra received word that the last of his operation had finally collapsed. The men who'd tried to rebuild it had turned on each other. The circuit was finished. Gone. She felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement that one chapter was truly closed. New threats would emerge. Different men with different methods. The work would never be finished. But the model existed now. The proof that another way was possible. That couldn't be taken back. Bristle died on a cold morning in the 7th year. Just went to sleep and didn't wake up. Myra buried him on the ridge overlooking the first settlement. Put a marker there made from the stones they'd used to build the walls. Here lies Bristle. He saved a life and changed the world. It was simple. True. Enough. Colt's limp got worse as the years went on. By the 9th year, he needed a cane. By the 10th, he'd mostly retired from physical labor. But his mind was sharp, and he spent his days teaching younger people strategy, tactics, how to think 3 moves ahead. Ruth found her daughter. Took 5 years of searching, but she found her. The reunion was complicated. The girl had been through things, had scars of her own. But she stayed. Slowly learned to trust again, slowly became part of the community. Watching Ruth with her daughter, seeing that broken relationship mend piece by piece, Myra understood something she hadn't before. Healing wasn't linear, wasn't clean, wasn't complete. It was just the choice to try. Every day, even when it hurt, even when it seemed impossible. That was the real lesson of this place. Not that you could erase trauma, not that you could become who you were before the bad things happened, but that you could become someone new. Someone shaped by the trauma, but not defined by it. Someone who carried the scars, but didn't let them dictate the future. 12 years after the canyon, Myra stood at the gate of the first settlement and watched a wagon approach. Another family. Another story of escape and survival and desperate hope. She was 34 now, had gray threading through her dark hair, had lines around her eyes from squinting into the sun, had scars on her hands from 1,000 days of work. She was also whole. Not healed. Probably never healed. But whole in a way that mattered more. The woman in the wagon looked at her with that familiar expression. Fear and hope tangled together. "Is this real?" the woman asked. "Is this place what they say it is?" Myra smiled. "Depends what they say. They say it's a place where people can start over, where you're safe, where you don't have to be afraid anymore. It's all of that. But it's also work. It's also facing the things you're running from. It's also choosing every day to be better than what hurt you. Can you do that?" The woman looked at her children in the wagon, at her husband with his haunted eyes, back at Myra. "I can try." "Then welcome home." Myra helped them down, got them settled, watched them take their first tentative steps into a new life. And later, sitting on the porch with Colt as the sun set over the valley they'd built together, she felt something close to peace. Not the absence of pain, not the erasure of memory, just the knowledge that she'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into something good, something lasting, something that would continue long after she was gone. "No regrets?" Colt asked quietly. Myra thought about everything. The pain, the violence, the choices that couldn't be unmade, the person she'd had to become to survive. "No," she said. "Not about this. Not about any of it." Because the truth was, she'd been given a choice in that canyon. Die or live. Give up or fight back. And every choice since then had been hers. Not her father's, not Danner's, not anyone else's. Hers. That was the real victory. Not killing Danner, not building the settlements, not saving other people. The victory was reclaiming herself. Taking back the power that had been stolen. Choosing her own path forward. Everything else was just the result of that one fundamental choice: to live, to fight, to build, to matter. The girl in the canyon had begged a dog not to leave her. The dog had stayed, had brought help, had started a chain of events that changed hundreds of lives. But the real miracle wasn't the dog, wasn't the man who'd answered the barking, wasn't even the settlements they'd built. The real miracle was simpler than that. A girl who should have died chose to live, chose to become something more than her trauma, chose to make sure other people had the same chance. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered. Not the violence, not the vengeance, not even the victory, just the choice to keep going, to keep building, to keep opening doors for people who desperately needed them opened. Myra stood and stretched, feeling her joints protest. "I'm getting old." "We're all getting old," Colt said. "Good. Means we lived long enough to get there." She looked out at the settlement one more time, at the lights in the windows, at the people moving through the streets, at the children playing without fear. This was her legacy. Not perfection, not paradise, just a place where people could be safe, could be themselves, could start over. It was enough. It was everything. And as the last light faded from the sky, Myra walked inside to the home she'd built, to the family she'd chosen, to the life she'd fought for and earned and refused to let anyone take away. The story that started in a canyon with a dying girl and a faithful dog had become something bigger than either of them, had become a movement, a revolution, a proof that even in the darkest places, even from the most broken beginnings, something beautiful could grow. Not easily, not perfectly, but truly. And that was the only ending that mattered.